In the world of Blue Lock, every decision is a step towards becoming the ultimate striker. One different move, and it could be the turning point of a player's rising glory to a depressing fall with no end. But what if those steps were taken differently? Imagine a world where the top players in Blue Lock would now be playing for different teams. Can you imagine Isagi now playing with Manshine? And what about Nagi playing for a team like PXG? In today's video, we are flipping the script and reshuffling the entire NEO EGOIST League. Who will thrive in these new conditions? And who will fail miserably with their new squad? But more importantly, which team becomes unstoppable once again? Let's kick things up, shall we? Before we begin, we need to pick our players as well as their respective new teams. As for the players, since we are going with the top players inside the Blue Lock project, it would make sense to have players such as Kaiser or Don Lorenzo available for selection. Therefore, as our first rule, we are not allowed to include players from outside the Blue Lock project. And as for our second rule, we are only allowed to select one player per team, which, being that the best player of each team, makes our choices pretty obvious. So, for our players, we got first, Meguro Bachira from Barcha. Second, we got Barou from Ubers, followed by Nagi from Manshine City, Itoshi Rin from PXG, and last but not least, the champions from the original storyline, Isagi and Bastard Manshine. With 5 players and 5 teams, I think it's time to reshuffle the entire league. Shall we? In this alternative scenario, our players would end up taking different choices, leading them to a completely different path and ultimately to a different ending in the NEO EGOIST League. Would that be a better outcome for some players, or would it completely kill their progress and end up in a worse fate? I guess it's too early to tell. So let's start with our first player, and that is none other than Meguro Bachira. In this alternative scenario, Bachira would not have picked the Spanish team Barcha as his representative team. Instead, he would be joining Bastard Manshine, and so join forces with the phenom Michael Kaiser. With Isagi out and Bachira in his place, the German team would take a complete turn when it comes to playing style. As we well know, Bachira relies on instinct, flair, and solo breakthroughs. He'll dribble past 3 defenders, pull out crazy moves, and either make a genius play or lose the ball doing something wild. Bachira loves playing with people who get his rhythm, and so linking up with players who match his flow. If Kaiser, despite his ego, buys into that rhythm, they could sync up for some beautiful combination plays. Not only that, but he would link well with aggressive forwards like Kunigami, creating space and chaos that others can capitalize on. With his flair and flow, it'd be the wild card that gives the team a more explosive edge. Now, besides all that good stuff, the team still loses their best player, and now Blue Lock's number 1 is Isagi. Without Isagi, Kaiser would have less internal pressure and might dominate the spotlight more. But on the other hand, he won't be pushed to bigger heights without his rivalry with Isagi. This means the new version we saw from Kaiser after facing the adversity of losing to Isagi would not take place in this alternative scenario. Instead, Kaiser would feel like the king of the field. That is, until he finally faced the Demon King. Now, how would the matches go this time around? Well, with only one roster fully complete, I guess we'll have to fill in one more team before thinking about results. And so, the second player changing teams will be Barou. And this time, he's got a bigger challenge ahead. Instead of joining the tactical masterminds in Ubers, he will join Bachira's former team, Barcha. With Bachira leading the squad, Barcha's style of play is an unpredictable and beautiful one. Besides not always going for the kill, when in rhythm, the team becomes almost impossible to stop. Now, with Barou replacing Bachira, the team loses that flashy and unpredictable playing style that Bachira provided, completely disrupting Barcha's entire philosophy. But with that being said, that does not mean the team will find itself in a worse spot compared to the original storyline. Thanks to the addition of Barou, Barcha now has its goal-focused striker and one of the best finishers in the entire verse. His physicality, presence, and ego would pressure defenses in a way that Barcha usually doesn't do. If the team can adapt to Barou's selfing style, he could give them the killer instinct they sometimes lack, and make them a contender this time around. So, how would the matches go for the new look Barcha? Since we already got 2 rosters fully filled up, we can finally start the face-offs. In this alternative scenario, the first match of the NEO EGOIST League would be the new look Manshine versus the new look Barcha. The match starts with Barou showing off to not only his opponents, but his own teammates and master. With a king of the field mentality, miscommunications within the Spanish team start happening. Besides that, with his sheer strength and ego, Barou would strike first, scoring the first goal in the NEO EGOIST League off a solo breakoff. But with Barcha feeling disconnected as a team, Manshine would thrive and take control of this game. Thanks to Kaiser not being ultra aggressive with Bachira the way he was towards Isagi, they would both be able to connect a lot more during the game. And so, instead of splitting into 2 sides, the Manshine team would play more freely and turn itself into a team from day one. With the Kaiser impact as well as Bachira's dribbling skills, Manshine would end up dominating the rest of the match, defeating the Spanish team with a result of 3-1, and so giving the first win to the German team and the first loss of the NEO EGOIST League to the newly formed Barcha. Now, would any of these 2 teams be strong enough to lift the trophy at the end, or is the next player too much for them to handle? Next up, it's time for Seishiro Nagi's future to take a turn. Instead of Manshine City and his best friend Reo, he will now join the French powerhouse PXG and join sides with Shiro Ryusei and Charles Chevalier. Filling in the shoes of the former bluelock #1 will not be an easy task, I might say. With that being said, this might end up being a beauty in disguise for our genius and end up in a way better future compared to the original storyline. The trio of Nagi, Shiro, and Charles would be pure chaos for enemy teams. With their individual brilliance, these 3 would be able to create unpredictable and spontaneous plays that not even Isagi and Rin would be able to stop. With Charles' world-class passes and Nagi's ability to control any ball even in the most unfavorable positions, it wouldn't take much time to produce an insane goal from these 2. Pair that with Shiro's athleticism and killer finishing, and you now have the strongest trio in the entire NEO EGOIST League. But besides all that good stuff, they would still lose one of bluelock's best players in Itoshi Rin. Without Rin, this team loses his genius tactical play and ability to control the game, having one of the best egos in the entire verse, as well as abilities like shooting, dribbling, and IQ. This new PXG squad would definitely miss some key aspects from Rin's game. But with that being said, there is a point where this new PXG team would suffer more compared to its older version with Itoshi Rin. As we well know, in the original storyline, Nagi's major flaw is his mental toughness and lack of motivation to become the #1 striker in the world. As you can see, after he beats Isagi on a play in the game between Manshine and Manshine City, he completely loses his will of fighting on the football field. With a lack of motivation and self-drive, this PXG team might lose their ace striker sooner than we think, which might reduce their chances of winning the NEO EGOIST League. Thankfully for them, that match won't come soon enough. In fact, their first 2 matches of the league will be versus the new Barcha squad as well as the new duo of Bachira and Kaiser. And so, let's see the results. In the match against Barou and the Barcha squad, the trio would completely dominate the football field. Let's be honest, even with Barou's incredible shooting skills and physicality, this Barcha squad is just outmatched when it comes to teams like PXG. So, besides an early score from the king himself, this game would ultimately end in PXG's 3-1 victory, with Nagi and Shiro being the main stars of the match. Now, with Manshine, that's a different story. The duo of Bachira and Kaiser versus the new trio of Nagi, Shiro, and Charles would be a battle throughout the entire 90 minutes. Thanks to Bachira's dribbling skills, the Manshine's team would draw first blood. But it wouldn't take too long for the French team to strike back with another phenomenal pass and finish thanks to the duo of Charles and Nagi. And so with another goal for each side, the game would be decided with a final chance that would determine the winning team. Without Isagi's metavision abilities of reading the field and his incredible adaptability to unexpected situations, this PXG trio would end up being too much for the new Manshine squad. And so, with Nagi's motivation still in full force, the PXG team would put an end to this match just before the final whistle. I must say, this team looks very exciting indeed. Now, down to our best players in all of bluelock. With 2 teams and 2 players left, it's time for Itoshi Rin's decision. Coming falling just short of the championship with PXG in the original storyline, this time Rin will be joining Manshine City and play for the #2 striker in the world. Where with Nagi as a centerpiece, the team would rely more on spontaneous plays and a football built around freedom and unpredictability. With Rin, it's quite the opposite. They would develop a more calculated approach with the goal of dominating the entire field, and so destroying their opponent's dreams using Rin's IQ football as the main source of success. With him, this team gains the consistency that it was looking for, making this Manshine City team way more dangerous than it ever was. With Rin being one of the best overall strikers in the league, with the best traits like shooting, dribbling, and IQ, he's able to carry teams to a win by himself. Now, besides his connection with the rest of the team not being as good as it was with Nagi, since there's no big egos on this squad, nobody would dare to challenge Rin for the main role. Therefore, as long as Shido doesn't change teams, I think Rin will be good. Who knows? Maybe this time they'll actually get a win. Let's see. First match for Manshine City will be once again Barou's team Barcha. Now, even though Manshine City got better, I wouldn't say they are miles better than Barcha. The match would start with an early strike from the main star himself, Itoshi Rin. With a perfect outside-the-box shot, Rin wastes no time drawing first blood, and so giving an early lead to Manshine City. Now, even though King Barou would be able to get one back, the trio of Rin, Reo, and Chigiri would be too much for Barou alone to handle, and so giving yet again a loss to the Spanish team and the first win for Manshine with a victory of 3-1. Next, they would face the newly formed Bastard Manshine. With a new duo leading the German team, this new Manshine squad would struggle massively in the beginning of the match. Having nobody but Rin to match Kaiser's abilities and intensity, the English team would fall into an early deficit of 2-0. But as we well know, with his back against the wall, Itoshi Rin unleashes his destructive flow state, completely dominating the entire Bastard Manshine squad and equalizing the match with 2 goals from himself. But with no Isagi to stop Rin in this match, Kaiser wouldn't be able to stop the genius by himself, and so Rin would make it 3-2 with a hat-trick of his own, just like he did in the original storyline versus his current team. Now, with a 2-0 start in the NEO EGOIST League, I must say this team looks a whole lot better than the original one. Next matchup would be against the new PXG side. Facing their original teams from the show, Nagi and Rin would be the main protagonists of this duel. But besides Rin's efforts and brilliance, this PXG team is just too stacked with too many good players compared to the English side. Not only that, but when both masters come into play, the gap between the two teams is just too much to handle, finishing the match with a 3-2 victory for the French side. And so, thanks to Nagi keeping his motivation intact, they are able to now defeat the genius that is Itoshi Rin. But with that being said, there is a certain player that is missing here. It's time for the last team in the NEO EGOIST League, as well as the main star of the show, Isagi. Instead of chasing Noah and crashing heads with his rival, Michael Kaiser, Isagi would make a different decision this time around, and so join forces with the tactical genius and best player in the world, Mark Snuffy, which means Isagi will be teaming up with the Italy Uber side. This would be by far the best fit for the adaptability genius Isagi. A team known for its genius tactical discipline will now gain the addition of the smartest and most adaptable player in the entire bluelock world. With Barou as its centerpiece, this team focused on its counter-attacking abilities, dominating the defensive side tactically, catching players like Kaiser and Yoichi off guard. But now, with Isagi as the head of the snake, Ubers will completely transform their tactical abilities to dominate the entire field. With players like Lorenzo, Nico, and Oliver Aiku, Isagi has all he needs to control the field from defense, midfield, and offense. This would be by far the smartest team in the league, and with Isagi of all players leading the way, this team would become unbeatable on the tactical field. So, with that being said, would this be enough for Isagi to reach number 1? Let's see. First match for the Uber side, well, we don't really need to say it again, right? Poor Barou doesn't really get a break. The first team in Uber's way would be Barcha. This match would end in pure domination from the Italian side. With a victory of 3-0, not even Barou's ego would outlast the tactical dominance of the Uber's side, and so finishing any Barcha's hope to get a win in the NEO EGOIST League. Next up would be the matches versus Bastard Manshine as well as his rival Itoshi Rin. In the match against Bastard, Isagi would struggle in the very beginning of the match thanks to Kaiser's presence. Being this the first time the two would face each other, Kaiser was ready to show Yoichi what a hero really looks like. Now, not depending solo on himself but on the entire team, the Italy Ubers are able to turn things around pretty quickly, pitting the bluelock hero with 2 goals of his own. Without Isagi on their team to figure out Uber's traps, the German team would fall with a result of 3-2, giving another victory yet again for the Uber side. As for the match with his rival Itoshi Rin, Isagi would finally face real adversity. Besides Uber's field dominance, they wouldn't be able to stop the genius Itoshi Rin in the first moments of the match. Before they knew it, thanks to Rin's scoring ability, the score was already 2-0 in the favor of the English side. In this scenario, it wasn't until the Masters got on the field that Snuffy unlocked Izagi's abilities even more. They would go on to control the rest of the match, making it impossible for Rin to solely take this team down. And so, thanks to Uber's system, Isagi would go on to turn this game around and win the match with an insane comeback, finishing with a 3-2 victory. This would make the standings quite interesting. With 2 teams tied in first place, it's time for the championship match. In this alternative scenario, the championship match would be between the Italy side Ubers versus the French of PXG. With Nagi finally having his chance to take revenge and finally beating Isagi, he would be extra motivated for this match. And so, the score of the match would first change thanks to a spectacular goal from the genius himself. Similar to what we had in the match between Manshine versus Bastard Manshine, Nagi would create a 1-in-a-million type goal. But it wouldn't be too long until Uber's tactics started taking place. Thanks to Izagi's metavision, he would finally understand that the main piece that makes the PXG team work so well is none other than Charles Chevalier. It is thanks to the midfielder that players like Nagi and Shido are able to excel and score such incredible goals. And so, it takes Ubers no time to trap PXG and leave Charles with no space to make those passes. So, with the odds in his favor, Uber's tactical expertise would once again outclass their opponents, and with the late goal scored by none other than Isagi Yoichi, the Italy side of Ubers would be crowned the champions of the NEO EGOIST League after a hard-fought 3-2 victory over the French team. In this alternative scenario, the standings would pan out this way, with Isagi and Ubers dominating the entire league, Rin not being able to carry his team to victory, and poor Barou not getting a single win. With that being said, the rankings would be the following. Isagi would finish the NEO EGOIST League as the number 1 in the rankings, and the highest bid of them all. Second would be obviously Itoshi Rin. Third would be Seishiro Nagi. In this alternative universe, thanks to the fact that he would only face Isagi in the championship match, Nagi would be able to keep himself motivated from start to finish, and so completely changing his trajectory compared to the original storyline. Now next would be Bachira, and last but not least would be Barou. Besides having by far the worst roster in the entire league, Barou's excellent finishing ability and ego would show enough talent to the clubs that wouldn't go unnoticed, and so giving an end to the NEO EGOIST League. What do you think about this scenario? Not too bad, huh? Now, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to click on this one next, where I created an alternative scenario where the Shadow Army would actually betray Jinwoo in solo leveling. Go on!